Hi guys, this lecture is on acting, realism, and the Moscow Art Theater. As defined by Edwin Wilson in our textbook, acting is impersonating a character in a dramatic presentation before a live audience. And the second definition I gave you was from Sanford Meisner, who was an original member of the group theater in New York that was highly influenced, completely inspired and influenced by the Moscow Art Theater's work. And Sanford Meisner came to this definition: acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. I've also worked with a student of Meisner who said that sometimes he would say acting is behaving truthfully under imaginary circumstances. As is in your textbook, 3 challenges of acting to make the characters believable. That's everything. Physical acting, being able to use your whole voice and body like a musical instrument, really. Having that kind of ability to achieve those kinds of colors and subtleties and dynamics and rhythm changes and all of those things. Synthesis and integration, combining inner and outer skills, the 3rd challenge. I threw this in. It's a piece of art, a sculpture that is thought to be Thespis, who was the first actor. We spoke about that earlier in the semester when we talked about ancient Greece, about that one member of the chorus who stepped out of the chorus and began to speak by himself and rather established an individual representing or portraying a character. And that was Thespis, given the name, and that's how we have the term thespians for theater people, theater artists. Greek amphitheater seated as many as 15,000, and this, of course, was the main challenge for the actors, was to be heard. Styles and demands of acting as outlined in the text. So formal movement and stylized gestures were previous to realism, and frequent direct addresses to the audience. In all instances, performance was more stylized than the acting we are accustomed to today, particularly in TV and film, where everything is very realistic. Vocal demands: actors need to be heard while maintaining the believability. So how do you, how are you heard on the last row of a theater like the Fox Theater in St. Louis, where I performed in a national tour? 5,000, seated 5,000. And in that scene, I'm supposed to be speaking to my husband in our living room. So how do I project up into the balcony and into the back row and have it be believable? And these are some of what we deal with. Physical demands, from Shakespeare's sword fights to West Side Stories, choreography and dance and knife fights, to farces where they require all kinds of physical comedy and pratfalls, the kind of things you might see an actor like Jim Carrey doing in film and TV. Molière, very important playwright and actor, 17th century France. That was the play Tartuffe, is an example of a play that he created. There's unique physical challenges or style of the 17th century France, and the clothing caused the men to pose their legs in such a way and their feet in certain balletic positions. 5 basic positions of ballet was used, so it was a very stylized movement and gesture going on then. And as we enter into realism, we have the work of 3 playwrights: Anton Chekhov, Heinrich Ibsen, and August Strindberg. And these 3 playwrights were very influential as to the style of what became realism, and of course the Moscow Art Theater and Stanislavski. All of this was happening at the same time. They were doing the work of Anton Chekhov. Michael Chekhov actually was a student of Stanislavski's who ended up performing in his uncle, the playwright Anton Chekhov was Michael Chekhov's uncle. So it's all very in the family. The need to define the craft or technique of credible natural acting became especially strong at the end of the 19th century. The birth of realism and the subsequent demands for the actors inspired the genius work of Konstantin Stanislavski. He said of his own system, "Create your own method. Don't depend slavishly on mine. Make up something that will work for you, but keep breaking traditions, I beg you." Konstantin Stanislavski, January 17th to 1863 to August 7, 1938. He and his professional partner, Nemirovich Danchenko, together formed what would become the Moscow Art Theater and change the history of theater altogether. Now, we talk about them bringing in this style of realistic acting and truth that hadn't otherwise been as clear, an approach to how to achieve that. And if we look back a little before realism, to the Elizabethan era, with, for instance, in your text it references Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. There's a portion of text that is 7 lines long, but all one sentence. This is one of the examples of the vocal demands that an actor has had in earlier in the history of humankind. So often now we don't have that kind we don't have those kinds of scripts to work with. Everything now is so often conversational in our, especially TV and film scripts, and in often many contemporary plays. But I'll read to you this 7-line, 1-sentence excerpt from Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. "O thou art fairer than the evening's air, clad in the beauty of 1,000 stars. Brighter art thou than flaming Jupiter when he appeared to hapless Semele, more lovely than the monarch of the sky in wanton Arethusa's azured arms, and none but thou shalt be my paramour." And I completely ran out of air. So that was all one breath and one sentence, which doesn't necessarily have to be one breath, but I thought I'd try it. So that's an example of the kind of demands that were there for the classical actor. And of course, later Stanislavski had this desire to create this system that would make everything more accessible and give us the tools as actors to achieve what we needed to achieve. And something to be said about this realistic acting is that it was considered realistic because it closely resembled what people could identify with and verify from their own experience. In performing plays by these dramatists, not only the spirit of the individual dramatic characters, but also the details of their behavior had to conform to what people saw of life around them. So, the Stanislavski system, it's a technique for realistic acting. Developed something that had never been done so he could hand it down to other theater artists. The actor must first of all believe in everything that takes place on stage, and most of all he must believe what he himself is doing. Here is a slideshow that I put together of photos of Stanislavski in various characters. That's him playing Othello, Shakespeare's Othello. That is a role General Kratitsky from a play called Enough Stupidity in Every Wise Man. That's Stanislavski as himself. This, I'm going to pause, is the group theater right here. And this is a group that emerged totally influenced and inspired by the MAT, the Moscow Art Theater. And they were all immigrants in New York. And so American actors. And they were incredibly influenced by the MAT. But what they decided was that the theater would no longer have stars, which is to what the MAT did. So they went from having these, star actors that would come out to perform a role very presentationally with, direct address to the audience, or being very clearly not in a realistic sort of acting situation with their partner on stage, but performing for the sake of the audience. We went from that style to this more specific, no one is a star, it is an ensemble, and they are acting truthfully with each other in a more realistic way. And the photo to the left is Stanislavski as Trigorin in The Seagull. And the actress, I believe her name is Poksanova. Poksanova is playing Nina. That was October 14th, 1898. The Seagull is what put the Moscow Art Theater on the map. Beautiful play. These are just more photos of him. Now these are members, if I remember correctly, those are members of the group theater right there. I can't see. Lee Strasberg, he was the original founder of the group theater. And that's Stella Adler, I'm going to pause it there. He and Stella were two of the founding members of this theater company. And Lee was actually studying with a guy by the name of Boleslavsky and Maria Uspenskaya. You don't need to know those two names. That's why I did not write them down for you to see. But they were members of the MAT. And when the MAT toured here in America, they decided they wanted to stay and teach American actors the technique, the Stanislavski system. This was in the 1920s, I think around 1923. He and Maria began teaching, and they taught this woman, Stella Adler, and Lee Strasberg, who you just saw, which is part of what influenced them to found the group. That's Lee again. Lee Strasberg has taught a lot of your favorite actors from films. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, those guys. This is Uta Hagen now. Uta actually was not a member of the group theater, but she was, I believe, directed by Harold Clurman, who was a member, founding member, I believe, of the group theater. And she was directed by him, and later the man who she ended up marrying, Herbert Berghoff, was connected with the group theater, and she married Herbert, and then they together opened the Herbert Berghoff Studio later. She's also a great acting teacher and theorist. This is Sanford Meisner, who was a member of the group theater and whose technique is used by everyone now. Another picture of Stella Adler. And of course, Sanford Meisner, the man we just saw and are seeing here again, and I will pause this, he is the one who gave us the definition of acting that I added to our two definitions. Living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. You'll notice he has a microphone on. That is because he had, I believe, throat cancer, and he couldn't really talk, so he had to sort of suck in air and then speak in a strange way to be heard. He had to put pockets of air in his mouth and then speak to be heard, but he taught until his dying day. He loved teaching. He loved the art. These are, I believe, notes from Lee Strasberg's notebook. Okay, this is Uta Hagen in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and I missed the photo to the left. Yes, that's it. Okay. This is another picture of Stanislavski in character. I thought you might like to see that. Argon in The Imaginary Invalid is the part he's playing. So he was very transformative in his ability to, he just completely became complete other characters. These are the points of the Stanislavski system: relaxation, concentration and observation, circle of attention, importance of specifics, inner truth, the magic if, action on stage, what, why, how, through line of as role. I'm not sure why I wrote that way. I think it should be through line of role, and ensemble playing. Now, so he basically identified that all great actors were in a very relaxed state. Does that mean that they were lethargic and not really pursuing something on stage? No. But they were relaxed enough to let, the way I've always thought of it is to let the piece sort of play them. Sanford Meisner is very much about letting the repetition, he uses a technique called repetition, to let the repetition do you, let the script play you, let the other person work on you and cause you to have something happen in you to respond to. So it's basically giving up control a lot and being relaxed enough to do so. Concentration and observation, always being aware of everything that's going on around you, just being present, really, is what that is. Circle of attention. Circle of attention, he was always trying to look for ways to feel less tense while performing, and how to be relaxed and focused on stage, and that if an actor could concentrate on circles, like the small circle, himself and one other actor or one other prop that he might be holding, which of course we talked about, the prop is an item that the actor might be using. So let's say the character is sitting at a table drinking a cup of coffee. Well, if he simply merely focuses on that action, that thing that he is doing, that alone can bring relaxation to actually, and Sanford Meisner called it the reality of doing. If you're going to drink a cup of coffee on stage, really do it. Now, it might be water because they might not be able to give you coffee, and then Uta Hagen, the other teacher, would say endow that water with the properties or qualities of a cup of coffee. So you see, we have 3 different teachers telling us how to do one simple thing, but how to do it believably. So, importance of specifics. Of course, that's just what I'm talking about right now. How to be specific, how to keep it real and true, inner truth, living the truth, and knowing it, having it inside. Don't try to fool anyone. Just actually think it. What? And the magic if. What if I were in this situation, Sarah? If Sarah Underwood was in this situation, what would I be thinking or doing if I were in this room as this character is in the play? This is why I talk the way I do about Hamlet sometimes. How would you feel if you came home from college, right, and saw your mother with your uncle? I put it that way so that you can go, oh, okay, that's how that feels. That's how that could feel, yes? And action on stage. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? Where am I? What time of day is it? Oh, it's midnight? Oh, okay, that's very different than if it were 1 in the afternoon, especially after I've worked 10 hours, okay? And the through line, always being the thing that ties it all the way through to the end. In other words, what smaller units or beats, we talked about beats. I will talk about beat if you haven't watched it already, the video I am doing on the glossary. I talk about the beats. It's the motivation change in a character. Beat changes. Intention, mental, thought shifts. And each small unit of beats, and then pursuing objectives to the super objective of the play, what you want more than anything. Hamlet, to avenge his father, right? That seems to be his super objective. So what myriad of actions and objectives does he pursue along the way to achieve that? Yes. So his through line of action, just knowing that path, where you're coming from and where you're going. And of course, most of all, being an ensemble player. Don't feel the need to be a star. Be a part of the picture and the story being told. Stanislavski's system and the work of the Mat had enormous impact on the world of the theater in America. I've already said that, I'm sorry. The group theater. There it is again, I keep saying it. I just wanted to honor this group with this photo. You've already seen these photos. Lee Strasberg, Sanford Meisner. Then we come to Stella Adler. I like this quote: "Life beats down and crushes the soul, and art reminds you that you have one." And finally, I end with a slide of Edward Norton, who you've probably seen in, he's a younger actor, a lot of films. The work of Stanislavski, Meisner, Adler, and the group continues to influence actors. A quote from Ed Norton: "The more you do your homework, the more you are free to be intuitive, but you've got to put the work in." And that pretty much is the belief of all of our younger successful actors. And thanks to Stanislavski, we have that work ethic now. Okay, thank you. There will be a quiz on acting, realism, and the mat.